Normalizing the abuse is when the person has come to a mental stage where they think that the abuse situation that they're in, like Stockholm syndrome, being gaslighted, being told what to do, being guided by other people, and the like, basically not living their normal life, they become so used they become so used to it that they think it's normal living, it's a normal life, it's a normal way to be. And once they're in that mental state, the abusers can tell them anything, can control them, because the abused victim is so used to relying on the abuser and has so much faith in the abuser that they think everything that comes out of the abuser's mouth is to help them. It's to make their life better. But their life will never get better because they're in the hands of a narcissist, someone who's manipulating their life for the better of the narcissist, not for the better of the victim. But the victim is led to believe the situation is normal. An example is a clear case study where her parents were part of a criminal group, and she found God. So to stop her going to the police about God, they made an agreement with her. But she kept slipping up because she'd fallen in love with a man and she wanted to stay with that man. And so they kept re-drugging her, gaslighting her, and doing all sorts of things to her. But the most powerful weapon they used was the Stockholm Syndrome, gaslighting, and isolation. And sometimes for months and months on end, she's isolated in the home, and basically no one saw her. And the man she was in love with, she would say, and she always fell back in love with him, to their frustration. And they were trying to get into relationships with other guys who they planned, who were narcissists and part of the criminal group as well, so that she could spend a lifetime, once she married him, being abused and used by him. And in such a situation that she thought the abuse was absolutely normal. I've seen a few cases of this where the woman's with the man, he can abuse her in any sense, and she assumes that the relationship they have is normal, it's natural, it's how life should be, and she doesn't question it. She just stays in that relationship. And it's quite shocking to say when you actually see it and you see it happening, and it's because all the authorities, the doctors, the health system, mental health, everyone who comes across her doesn't see anything wrong because she's happy she's in the relationship, because it's become normal to her. So there's nothing for her to complain about. Her mind has been isolated and has been told that this is the only way to be, the only way to live. This is a wonderful life. The man she's with, she chose, which she didn't. The man she's with treats her with respect, which he doesn't. But because of like pornography, abusive pornography, and immoral, indecent, and gross pornography and such is becoming so popular, and it's done everywhere. It's simply a case of everyone does it. So if I do it to you, it's fine because it's what's naturally what everyone does. And so the victim thinks, yes, this is what everyone does. And if an immoral, indecent, unjust relationship where I'm at the bottom of the family but I'm being abused, it's fine. And so this is why we always should trust our instincts over what people tell us. And with Claire, she'd fallen in love with somebody. They told her that she was obsessed with that person and it wasn't love. So the person gets the idea that everything the abusers, the narcissists or the manipulators are telling them, people who are controlling them, it's true. So she could actually fall completely and totally, mentally, spiritually, sexually, and wholesomely in love with a person and just be told, no, that's obsession. The way your body's reacting is abnormal, it's wrong. You don't really love this person. You're in this relation, you're attracted to this person, and it's very unhealthy and very bad for you. Don't follow it. But she can't help it because she's in love. So she's become so completely normalized. She sees the situation as completely normal that they can teach her abnormal things in an abusive way, and she has no idea that what she's being taught is wrong, and it's against her body, spirit, heartfelt, physical, sexual functions, which are all telling you something else. But her mind's become so isolated from everything else. She only believes what they teach her, and they become here like a soul university. So isolation's like you go to a primary school, a high school, a a university of life that's solely taught by the isolators, the people who've isolated the victim. And then during that period of time, only that education enters the mind of the victim, along with drug abuse, drugs, Stockholm syndrome, where they get sympathy with their captors, and gaslighting, where they never get enough confidence to actually, with mental strength, question what is going on in their life. So they're controlled, and they're happy to be controlled. They're happy to enjoy it and to think it's normal. So the situation has become normal to the isolated person because they grew up in a fake belief system created by narcissists so that the victim can be continually abused in the future. In my home with myself and my marriage, a lot of what happened became very normal to me. And I felt that her taking advantage of me was normal. Her being abusive was often was my mistake, or I was doing something wrong because she'd been constantly telling me, especially while I was working, many hours on the computer. She was telling me that I was failing her and that I'd made mistakes, and she often put words in my mouth to convince me that I made mistakes, I'd done wrong, I failed the family, I was a failure as a husband, and on and on and on while I worked and stuff like that. And often I would just zone her out, was what I thought, and carry on working because she just wouldn't get off my case. And like I said at one stage, one of my videos, one of my daughters, I'm not going to say which, and the wife used to come into the room and constantly put me down every afternoon. And it became such a, I don't know, it was like some kind of weird contest where they were just trying to show me that women were better than men and that I was an utter failure as a homeschooling father, and they were great successes out in the academic world and out in the working world, and I was a total complete failure. And they were far better than me, and they seemed to like telling me that all the time, and it really did harm to my confidence. Hearing this constant drone for 2 or 3 years, and I was trying to hold the family together. I was doing this very stupid, foolish thing, but believe me, if the family was held together, everything would be all right in the end. And it was very foolish. And staying home and working on the computer for 6 years and not going out in the world, I became very isolated. And she'd go to work and come home, and she just had ways of getting at me over and over and over again. And in the end, when she left, I was a total mental mess. I'd become so isolated, so confused about the world. I actually thought that the life we were living, which was very abnormal in the sense of the abuse she was laying on me all the time, I got to the stage where I thought it was normal. A lot of it was lack of confidence from childhood. You start off abusers, if you're if you have a lack of confidence and you go, it makes you an easy victim for being abused, isolated, controlled. And then as they go along, if you don't do well, they keep re-isolating you. I had 6 years of isolation. Whereas with Clea, she goes out and works at a place. I've seen her many times, very confident, very sure of herself. But then, another part is it happens in churches. I've seen it happen in churches. I've seen young women trying to get ahead and trying to have a life and a future of their own, and fall in love with one guy, wanting to be with that guy, and the mother, in particular, could be the father too, doesn't like the guy the daughter falls in love with, thinks that it's a bad reputation for the church, or maybe the firstborn became a non-religious person, became very worldly, so the mother becomes super overprotective of the next born, which might be a female, and then in that case she constantly keeps them at home, homeschooling and isolation from the world. But if there is any interaction, like the young woman gets a job and the mother is constantly on her case, constantly watching her, gets the other members of the family, like other daughters, to watch her. The mother has got in her head that this daughter is never going to be a failure. This one's going to be a good religious girl. She's going to marry a really good religious man of the parents' choosing and be happy ever after. But it doesn't work that way, because the girl's not actually in love with any of the guys that the mother convinces her that she's in love with. So the mother convinces her with the girl's mind through isolation, through prayers, through Bible, through the mother carefully selecting religious texts to teach the young girl that this is the way to be, what the mother chooses is right, the parent is always right, the mother is always right, she only wants best for her children. She follows God, so surely the daughter must follow with full trust the mother. And through isolation in the church system, the daughter can be, or sons can be, isolated in a life that's not natural, but they think it is natural. It's been naturalized throughout their whole lives because they've grown up in this religious situation. And then they marry people who the parents choose or coerce, and they work it out in the church system that the person constantly meets that person. And then they say, oh, it's God's will. God's put it together. I can't understand how they believe in God and they believe it's God's will when they know beyond doubt they set it up. But they also say that I prayed to God, I want God's help and guidance. Oh, there's a nice guy. He's good enough for my daughter. God, you put him there for me to set my daughter up with. So she sets her daughter up with a guy who doesn't love her. And he has natural sexual urges, and he looks at the daughter and thinks, yeah, she'll be good enough. And so isolation and normalizing a situation that is abusive and that is wrong and that the person is controlled in is another way that people can be very easily controlled. And to the outside world, it looks fine. It looks normal. What goes on behind closed doors, as long as the victim believes that what goes on behind closed doors is normal living, is a normal life, is natural, is what other people do, then the victim has nothing to complain about. And that's what the narcissists and the abusers know. So they get them in that mental frame of mind, and they get them married off to someone who's going to be very cruel and nasty to them for the rest of their life. But as long as the victim thinks that the person that they're marrying is normal, and over a period of time they're gently coerced into all this indecency, immorality, and this includes the Christian ones, and abused mentally, emotionally, physically, the victim will assume that it's normal life. and this is what they deserve, and this is what, in the religious sense, what God has given them. So they must try everything they can to be the best wife possible. And the atheist system just to be a really good wife, looking after her husband to the best she can. So he comes home, he slaps her around, demands that she's naked at the door, things like that, and he just tells it's his kinky thrill and stuff like that, and as his wife, she must obey and do it. And so, normalizing an abusive situation is what narcissists are very good at. And when people are in that situation, it's very hard to see that their mind has been retrained. So if they actually went out and talked to someone in the secular world and said, look, this is what's happening in my home, is this normal? And like a therapist, not of the parents' choosing, or of someone who has no reaction with the family at all. It has to be someone who's no doings with the family at all, and is not suggested by the parents. And they go and talk to that person and say, is this normal? And the person freaks out and says, you've got to be kidding it. That's absolutely not normal. And so, and as long as the victim believes it's normal and stays in, does not question it, they're going to have a life that they were not born for, and they're going to probably have a huge amount of depression and anxiety and sadness and be on drugs and everything for the rest of their life. It's terrible. But I just want to bring that up.